He was born on the open steppe, place where the land had no walls and the sky felt endless. Mostly because there was absolutely nothing to block the view except more grass. His first cradle was a felt blanket inside a gear, warmed by a fire fed with dried dung. Nothing says welcome to Earth quite like the aromatic scent of burning manure. From the moment he could crawl, the rhythm of hooves shaped his world. In the lands of Genghis Khan, a child didn't grow up sheltered. He grew up wondering if the wind was trying to kill him, before he could read faces. He learned to read the sky because if the sky looked grumpy, he died. Before he could count, he could ride. At 3, he was placed on a sheep's back. Sheep aren't exactly known for their handling or high-speed performance, but they're soft when you fall. By 5, he graduated to a small horse. Falling was expected. Crying, however, was a great way to get mocked by your own mother. Survival of the grittiest food was never wasted. Meat was dried until it had the texture of a leather boot. In emergencies, he learned you could drink blood directly from a horse's vein and seal the wound with mud. It wasn't a Michelin star meal, but it beat starving, and the horse didn't seem to mind as long as you didn't make it weird. Hunger wasn't a tragedy. It was just a Tuesday. Cold wasn't an enemy. It was just a neighbor who never left. By 7, he got his first bow. He practiced until the bowstring felt like a part of his arm, and his fingers were permanently calloused. Accuracy mattered more than strength. Speed mattered more than courage. If you were brave but slow, you were just a very courageous target. The great management consultant, Genghis Khan, there was no noble blood here. You didn't get a promotion because your dad was a duke. You got a promotion because you could shoot a bird out of the sky while traveling 30 miles per hour. When Genghis Khan united the tribes, the boy became a soldier in the ultimate corporate restructuring. He was a number in a system of tens, hundreds, and thousands. Discipline was absolute. If one guy in your group of 10 ran away, the other 9 were executed. Talk about peer pressure. Training was relentless. A hunt was actually just a massive, terrifying military drill where they encircled an entire forest. If a rabbit escaped the circle, soldier responsible got a lecture he'd never forget. He was lucky. The gear and the gore by his teens. He was a walking hardware store. A composite bow, a curved saber, a lance, and 3 spare horses. He rotated horses like modern commuters, changed lanes. His armor was silk, leather, and iron light enough to dance in, strong enough to ruin an enemy's afternoon. Before battle, there were no Braveheart speeches. No one needed to be told why they were there. Orders were flags and horns. Silence was respected more than bravery. If you were screaming, you weren't aiming. His first real battle was against a settled army men in heavy armor who looked like shiny tin cans. They laughed at the Mongols at first. "Look at these guys on their tiny ponies," they probably said. Then the arrows came. Thousands of them. The Mongols perfected the feigned retreat, which is basically the military version of psych. They'd run away, wait for the enemy to get tired and disorganized, then turn around and turn them into pincushions. The harsh reality he learned that day that war wasn't about honor. Honor was for dead people. War was about efficiency. Cities that resisted were erased. It wasn't for fun. It was a PR strategy. Terror travels faster than a horse. If one city fought and turned into a bonfire, the next 10 cities usually found their keys and opened the gates pretty quickly. He smelled death so thick it felt like he could chew it. At night, he'd clean his gear in total silence. Survival demanded a heart as hard as the frozen ground. The long ride as years passed, he rode further than his ancestors' wildest dreams. He saw forests, deserts, and cities that felt like cages. He saw different gods and heard different languages, but the rules of the Khan remained the same. Results or nothing. He rose through the ranks, a squad leader and a commander. He followed Genghis not as a god, but as the law. Questioning an order wasn't a debate. It was a suicide note. Now, in middle age, his body is a map of everywhere he's been. Old arrow wounds ache when the wind turns sharp. Most of his childhood friends are buried in unmarked graves that the grass has already reclaimed. He sleeps under the open sky, still trusting his horse more than any stone wall. Walls can be broken. A horse can run. He looks at his hands scarred, leathery, and still steady on the reins. The great Khan is gone, but the empire is still hungry. His back hurts, his eyes are tired, but the drum is sounding again. He isn't a man anymore. He's a part of the wind. And the wind doesn't stop just because it's tired as the years caught up to him. The world started changing faster than a stampede. Genghis Khan wasn't just a guy in a tent anymore. He was a brand of law, a headache for everyone from the Pacific to lands the soldier couldn't pronounce without twisting his tongue. The army was adapting. Suddenly, there were giant wooden catapults and siege engines rolling around. The Mongols were basically the first people to realize that if you can't jump over a wall, you should just hire a guy from 3 countries away to knock it down for you. Chinese engineers, Persian scribes, the army was becoming a deadly multicultural HR nightmare. The soldier was no longer the guy leading the Yeehaw charge. His knees had decided to start their own rebellion. He shifted into the grumpy mentor phase, training kids who were thin, quiet, had that specific, "I haven't slept in 3 days" look. He taught them to shoot without thinking, because thinking is what gets you an arrow in the neck. He taught them that mercy wasn't a weakness, but disobedience was a great way to end up as bird feed. He'd learned the ultimate truth. Being a hero is great for songs, but being disciplined is great for staying alive to hear them. New management. Same problems when Genghis Khan died. There wasn't a parade or a national day of mourning. The army just kept moving. It was the ultimate per my last email transition. The soldier felt a twinge of loss, but mostly he just felt his joints aching. Genghis Khan took over, and the war machine pivoted west, toward stone cities and knights who wore so much armor, they looked like walking kitchen cabinets. Age slowed his reflexes, but it made his brain a weapon. He became the guy who knew exactly how much dried meat a man could eat before he started hallucinating, and how many horses you could lose before your blitzkrieg turned into a long walk home. He had seen kingdoms fall not because they lacked heart, but because they were slower than a wet blanket, the realities of home and battle. He stopped chasing glory and started chasing, not being dead. He realized that the ground doesn't care how brave you were before you became part of it. He had sons now. Some made it, some didn't. The steppe has a very harsh return policy. When he did go home, the ger felt smaller, and his mother was gone. He realized he didn't really belong in a home anyway. He was like a shark if he stopped moving, he'd probably just evaporate. The world had grown too large, and his map was running out of edges. The final ride on his last campaign. His body finally gave him the blue screen of death. A fever hit him after weeks of riding through rain that felt like liquid ice. In the Mongol army, being sick was treated with the same sympathy you'd give a broken wagon wheel. If you could ride, you rode.
Let the great
If you
hunt
couldn't,
begin. Close
well,
the circle.
hope you like the scenery. He refused to slow down the unit because being the slow guy was the ultimate insult. One night, he dismounted so slowly he looked like he was moving through honey. Joints burning, breath shallow, but he fed his horse first. You always feed the horse first. The horse is your ride, your pantry, and your only friend who doesn't talk back. He sharpened his blade out of habit, a bit like checking your phone one last time even though you know nobody texted around him. The Gen Z Mongols were laughing and planning their futures. He just stared at the sky, the same sky that had watched him fall off a sheep 40 years ago. He didn't think of glory or empire. He thought of the smell of wet grass and the weight of a bow. The unmarked exit by morning. His legs had officially resigned. The army moved on. No, thank you for your service plaque. No gold watch. Just the Mongol way. They wrapped him up and tucked him away from the road. Not because they were being sentimental, but because they didn't want the enemy to have the satisfaction of finding him. Grass grew over him. Seasons changed. Somewhere far away, a king in a stone castle was probably shaking in his boots at the sound of hooves. Never realizing he was being terrified by the legacy of a man who died in the mud without a name.